Absolute Flash, issue 13, Jeff Lemire writing with Haining on the art. And this was a very interesting issue of Absolute Flash, I thought, because it was probably the most straightforward and conventional issue of Absolute Flash.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't really been keeping up that much on Absolute Flash. I reread back to what I needed to since the last time I was on the show, which is also one I had to cover. But I don't know. It's always been this thing where it felt like it was... It had in mind the story you want to tell, and maybe it was just stretched a bit too long. I think that was kind of the thing that was really holding it back there. This issue, picking this one up, it felt very well paced. I appreciated all the stuff going on here. Obviously, we get introduced to a new major threat picking up at the end of this issue, but overall, I was super into this issue compared to previous ones.
Yeah, I like this one quite a bit. I think for me, and I was hoping for this with what they set up at the end of the last one with him going back to the Dibney shelter, is that I really liked when they did that one issue where it was like, hey, he's at the shelter and here's Linda, there's a little bit of chemistry, and I was like, oh, I like the idea of them building up a supporting cast, and then they kind of ditched it immediately. And don't get me wrong, they did some fun stuff with the Rogues after that, and I'm glad that they built up the Rogues and they feel fleshed out now. But right. I was really happy to go back and maybe flesh out these other supporting characters and actually give them like people that he can confide in. So this issue largely revolving around Linda, and Linda like saying, hey, I know you're this guy who's got super speed. I got footage of you in my phone when you were fighting that thing last time you were here. Like their relationship and her kind of been into it and wanting to like help him and like uncover like where his dad might be and like testing his powers out, riding piggyback and freaking out about how it feels. Like all that I thought was just very delightful. I like them building up this relationship. And just, I think our general attitude and personality was really giving him someone to bounce off of, which I think is something that he's been missing for a lot of this book, is that he's not had someone to bounce off of that isn't like kind of an antagonist. Even though the Rogues kind of became allies, which is nice, he's not really had a friend. He's not really had someone, or a love interest even in this case, where he's been able to interact that way with anyone.
Yeah, I also really appreciate the fact that it goes in deeper of like, why is she at the shelter? Like, what happened to give her this history as well? And, obviously, while he's not in a good place right now, he's very much more emotional. He's got a lot more baggage on him now. And I think what really works here is the fact that while they are both in this sort of negative situation, they're able to relate to each other there. She's so much more optimistic. She's so much more of like, hey, we can do something. Let's get out there. Let's like try to explore this a bit more. And it just works as a counterpoint. Like it really sells their relationship just from a yin yang sort of perspective.
Yeah, and it fleshes out her backstory. We see that she was taking care of her dad, who was a drunk, and then presumably he maybe passed away, and that's why she's here, or maybe she ran away because it was a toxic environment. And he talks about his dad and how he was kind of taking care of him almost taking care of his mum, before she seemingly killed herself. And that's, so there's kind of like a bit of bonding over like taking care of a parent aspect.
They specifically say that she was bipolar and that she wasn't so good about taking her meds, and he feels guilty about not like staying on her about that stuff. My only thing that I just want to put in the sand right now, I hope that stays normal, average human stuff. I don't want that to relate to some speed force or anything else. That needs to stay as human as humanly possible.
Oh no, I agree. I don't want them ever to somehow bring his mum back and like reveal something or anything. Like just have it be a traditional like real life. She had bipolar disorder and that's it. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
So no, I like that bonding. Also, Ralph gets a little bit of a nice moment where, and they tease something here as well, where Ralph's like, "Hey, like after you were here last time, some suits came around and asked us a bunch of questions, and this guy gave me this card, and I was to call him if he ever came back. And we see the card, and it says DEO, which okay, we're doing the DEO in the Absolute Universe. That's cool, right? I like seeing that. But the name of the agent was particularly notable." Agent Hunter Zolomon.
I don't understand, Peter. Is this some sort of reference to something I don't understand?
Well, you see, you know how we had Thawne, and Eobard Thawne is the Reverse Flash, or also sometimes referred to as Professor Zoom. That was Barry's arch nemesis. Hunter Zolomon kind of became Wally's Reverse Flash. And so, very interesting name to drop like that as a little tease. Yeah. Very, very interesting. But Ralph, what I was getting to is he rips it up and says, no, like, I'm not going to rat you out. Like, when you're here, you've got a home here. I want to help you, blah, blah, blah. So he looks like a nice guy coming out of this. Mm-hmm. But like I said, most of this issue is Linda teasing Wally, revealing she knows about him, and getting into the nitty gritty, making fun of his outfit a little bit, which I actually... one I was thinking, are they teasing that maybe he'll get like a slightly more traditional outfit because she's going to like sort of like come in and try and like, you know, make it a bit more sleek or fix up or whatever. I don't know if they're going to do that. It may actually just be set up for a payoff that came later, which I actually really liked without them drawing attention to it. Is that in the later scene when they're going back to the military base / lab to investigate like where his dad might have went, she's just wearing his jacket, like his Flash jacket. Right, and he's not wearing it. And I thought that was just such a nice little visual touch of like, we're not going to call it out, we're not going to do a scene where like he gives it to her, we're just going to have her wearing it, and it already builds up this idea of how casual and like close they're already starting to feel because she's wearing his jacket. I just thought it was a really neat little touch.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's just this tiny little cuteness to it, this tiny little thing of like, yeah, you know, the boyfriend giving the girlfriend the jacket, whatever. Don't need to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah. I will say on the art though, like they maybe go a little bit too far with how big her eyes are. She's got the big like manga eyes, which I'm like, you know what, it's working for the cutesiness to an extent, but it's maybe just a little over the top.
There's one or two shots where it's just extremely out of place, like it just feels too big. But yeah, I like the character design more than I dislike it. Even with the big eyes, I think that it works for the most part. The other part of it is I don't even know that much about Linda from the main universe, but they established that this Linda, her whole thing is she can be the man in the chair. Like she's good with computers. That's apparently her thing.
Yeah, that's not her thing in the main universe. Yeah. She's a reporter in the main universe, if I recall correctly. So yeah, they're going to do a little bit of man in the chair with her, which is, you know, something different. I like the running joke here as well of like her being like, oh, like, can I steal your fries? And he's like, wait, I'm the one who's burning like unnatural amount of calories within all the running. And she's like, don't fry shame me. That's a funny joke. I'm into it.
I'd love that to be just a recurring thing throughout their relationship, is like he eats these massive amounts because he's the Flash, but she's also able to keep up. And he's like, where does it go? What is happening?
How are you not like a mountain? Like what's happening right now?
Exactly.
But no, it's a funny joke, and it's like, hey, let's go and try and like, you know, find your dad. Like if he's out there, if he's in this still point place, then let's try and figure it out. So, you know, they're being proactive, which I like, and because this isn't like darting around and it's not doing the running from the rogues or Thawne in the lab, and we're not doing that thing where his mind's frazzled so he's jumping around mentally. I like how linear this plays out, and that they come up with a plan. Okay, let's find the dad. His new friend now wants to help him, which endears them as friends, right? And possibly romantic partners. It just, you know, everything flows really well here in a way that I think is really nice. And then, of course, the ending kind of sets up what our villain's going to be. Now, we did tease this in a previous issue that there was going to be a Mirror Master, but this is the attack. This is the, you know, getting involved. So
I double checked on that. That was actually at the end of the first issue. The very first issue, they had the it was a 1 year later time skip, and then it showed Mirror Master coming out of in like this wreckage and this whatever. And obviously back then we had no idea what was happening, but last issue said end of year 1. So the fact that like, okay, they're at this wreckage, all this stuff, Mirror Master showing up, it feels like, okay, there has been a long plan here. There has been a thing where they've been really building up to this.
And correct me if I'm wrong, we also get a tease that this Mirror Master met the regular Mirror Master, right? That was in Absolute Evil.
That was in just before DCKO. I think, it might have been Absolute Evil.
Yeah, because I remember thinking, this is the first time like two versions from these two universes have met is the mirror, but it made sense because Mirror Master maybe can jump between because of the mirror stuff. But
mirror dimensions is somehow linked on that side, whatever.
Yeah, anyway, so they see in the reflection, it's kind of weird, there's like duplicates of them, and then like it's like Linda gets trapped in the mirror, so he jumps in, and they're in the mirrors with, you know, this version of Mirror Master, and that's kind of the big cliffhanger. And it says part 1 of 2 for this, so going to be a nice tight story, seemingly, of them dealing with Mirror Master. I really like this issue, and I love that it spent 90% just doing the relationship stuff. Like, because, you know, like, I like the tease of it back when we first seen her, right? When it was lunchtime or whatever it was back in issue 5 or 6. But I think this was like, no, we're going to spend time with them. We're going to do this, right? So that when she is in trouble, we care a bit more. And it feels like they've actually bonded, and it feels like they actually have chemistry. Yeah, I really appreciate
absolutely. that. And again, even obviously most of the issue is spent with Linda, but even the Dibney stuff, I think that it does a good job of having a stripped down cast. We don't have to deal with Grodd. We don't have to deal with the Rogues, any of the family stuff. We're able to just take these two, give them a page or two, and say, yeah, they're on Wally's side. We know that we can rely on them moving forward. Yeah.
Building a supporting cast. I really like that. If anything, I would have liked it a little bit sooner, but hey, you know what? This is not that late either, all things considered. So, no, it's a good time. Like I say, you know, they are here by Haining, who is a new artist on the book. This is not the artist who was on previous issues. I do think it's mostly pleasant. I think it, like I say, it's a little bit manga in the faces for my taste, especially on Linda. But I will say that despite that, it does kind of fit the vibe and the energy that I think the characters are supposed to have at any given time. So it's it's not failing to elicit the response that it's supposed to elicit. It's just maybe not my preferred style in terms of actual drawing.
No, that's fair. I mean, again, we mentioned the Big Eye stuff. That's very manga in that sort of way. But even down to like the different color schemes and stuff like that, it's very heavy blues when they go back to Fort Fox and they're outside at night, and then it's greens once they go into the bathroom where Mirror Master is. So I think it does a good job of really playing with that sort of color scheme that the other book had, or the other artist had the whole way through.
Yeah, and it's all very straightforward boxes and rectangles, panels like you'd expect. Aside from when he's running with her on his back at super speed, and it's angles to give the sense of motion, which is fun because she's yelling stop, which is just funny seeing her be scared because he's moving too fast. And then the other exception to that is at the end when they go into the mirror, all of a sudden the panels start becoming weird shapes and they're falling at angles because they're representing the glass shattering and all that, the disorientation. So, you know,
the very first page is also a dream sequence, and that's also in a slightly different way. So obviously, anytime they break the panels, it is for something more superpowered, something more spectacular than just him walking around with Linda.
Yeah, but it's vast majority of it is regular, just box panels, but that makes when they don't do that stand out more. You know, it has more impact because it has been so typical up until that point. So. No, really solid stuff. Really like this issue. It's probably in my top 2 or 3 issues of this book, right? I don't know if it's quite my favorite. I really like the one where the Rogues actually sort of like come after Wally, the one that sort of started with the tease of the weather changing and all that, because there was a lot of atmosphere in that issue. But this is probably the best issue from a character perspective for me out of the book.
No, I'd agree. I mean, I think the last one I was on was when they went to the Dibney house in the first place. That was when I was last on the show. Yeah. But no, I reread the Thawne issues just to be caught up for this, and I couldn't get into that Thawne 2-parter. Like, neither of those really worked for me. It was all too hectic. There was too much going on.
We were pretty critical of the lot. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but I think the last issue just felt like a bit of an anticlimax. Like, it didn't feel like the Thawne monster did that much before he was defeated.
No, it feels like they were limited by the fact of, I said I'd get to Mirror Master end of year 1. I have to wrap this up at issue 12. Like, that is how that has to happen. So yeah, I also appreciate this. And as much as it is continuing on the story, because he sits down and talks to Linda, and even stuff that Dibney gives as well, I think it is also a good jumping on point as well. I think it does a good job of saying, like, look, if you didn't stick around the previous arc, here's the bare basics you need to know. You should go back and read it, but you don't have to.
Yeah. But yeah, that is the Absolute Flash 13. What are you giving it?
I think I'm going to settle down on a 7.5. I think I probably could have given an 8 if I was just like really, really hard into the art, but story-wise, I think it did everything it needed to do properly here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it the 8. I think I'm just really into what the character stuff was doing. And if the art was even more my thing, it might have even bumped up another half point or so.